Okay, so we've got the camera set up, we've got the image in the background. All we need to do now is align our scene. And as you can see from entering all this data, we've got it pretty much spot on as it is. All we need to do now is adjust the position and the inclination of the camera to match that of the photographer who took the picture. You can see from the height of these railings, they're about 1 meter high. So this person was probably on their, crouched down on a knee to support themselves. So it's probably going to be just under 1 meter high. So the way to do that is eyeballing it first. Now, if this had been a more strong geometric structure, or we didn't have all of these walls down here, we'd be looking for like the edge of a wall or something, where we could first align the ground to one of these grid markers for 0, and then after we've established that point, we'd get the vertical correct, and then we could just rotate around the point that we would have to get it aligned up. But just for this exercise, we can just use these converging lines of perspective from the bottom of the buildings to establish a ground plane first, and then we can make some verticals here and test it that way. So what I'm aiming to do is, because this is going to be the main area of interest in the scene, I'm going to aim to try and keep this around where the 0 point would be in the world space. And if you project from the edge of this curb area out across the alley to the other side, we're going to use that to establish that, and then we'll use the edges of the grid to help us test how accurate we've been with that. So we can just move in and out using the left, middle and right buttons. So left button will rotate or orbit, middle will move, and right will pan in and out. So I'm reasonably happy with that. This line comes along from the edge of there, so the main point of focus in the image is around 0, and then these lines shoot down and follow the perspective. But I can't be 100% sure they're correct right now, so what I'm going to do is just create a grid. Now you could, depending on if you do active draw or you just have one placed on the scene, that's up to you. I'm just going to go into the top view, so I'll change panels, top, and I'm just going to go through polygons and draw a grid. I'm just going to do it quite roughly for now, and I'm going to go to the grid shape, go to the polyplane, and I'm going to just give it well, that's 8, so we'll double that up, and height, and make this too wide. So roughly 22. So I'm going to put some subdivisions here just so we get some visual feedback. We don't need them. I mean, it is a curved surface, but we're not looking for that level of accuracy in this little test. All we're aiming to do is model a simple proxy scene so we can place an object in here and light it correctly, and the shadows can fall on the ground and the wall as we need them to be. So it doesn't have to be massively accurate. You could get really accurate with it if you wanted to, but you're probably better off just modeling the main structures like the lamppost, the fence, the walls, so that the light will cast shadow. And you can see here that semi-transparent shadow where this sort of grid is. So you could model the main structures and then just put a grid of sort of semi-opacity on there. So anyway, we've got that grid set there, and we can even just call it ground if you want to, and go back to here, and I'm just going to select the ground plane, press R the scale, and just extend it out to meet the limits of the wall. Now I'm having to move that a little bit, because one thing that you will know about this image after you've worked with it for a little while is that the focal point in the center of the frame is not actually the end of the alley, it's a little bit off. You can always test this. I'm just going to extend this out a little bit further as well. You can always test this by, if you go back to full screen, you can put on field chart and you can see the center of the frame is actually a little bit down here. So if you were to try and line up the center down there, you know it's going to be a little bit off. So analyze the image you're working with is the purpose of this exercise, really, so you can get an idea of how the camera, how the lens, how everything's working together. I'm just going to shifty this along a wee bit. I mean, what I really should have done was snap the pivot point to the edge of the grid, then I could just extend it back and forwards and not do what I'm doing here, have the center of the grid miles away. And what actually is happening there, as you can see, is going through the polyplane. So I'm going to get it to the closer to the camera. There we go. And I'm going to go to the camera, select the camera, so I'll go view, select camera. I can get the image plane, and we can see the extent of the plane is too close to the camera, so I'm just going to change the depth to be like 800 or something. Still cutting through, but that's enough for now. Anyway, we can see what's going on. So I've got the width of the plane okay. It's touching the edges of the wall, but as we can see, this is highlighting the errors we have with the camera. Okay, you can see that this is going beneath where the actual floor would be. So if we use Alt, just deselect first, use Alt, you can just rotate that around. Move it if need be, until we get the floor lined up, and that looks reasonably good. You could shift it just a little bit, and of course if you were to go and select the camera again, you can look at its transforms and you can move in finer increments here. If you look, when I hit Alt and rotate around, you can see the numbers actually changing in finer increments. So that's almost there, but just so you can add a little bit more finer detail on your rotations if you need be. Like so. So now I'm quite happy with that. What I don't want to happen is for the camera to actually move. So I'm going to go back into its transforms, and I can set the translation and lock it. So now it won't move. And if I lock the rotation, now it will not rotate either. You could scale it, lock the scale too, just to be on the safe side. Okay, so now we have our camera set up, and we have everything locked. We can just do a save and start to model a more detailed version of the environment. So we'll come back and have a look at that when it's done.